In this opportunity, we are analyzing Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Black Cat. But first, a little background about the writer. Edgar Allan Poe was born on January the 19th, 1809 in Massachusetts, the United States. He was an author, poet, editor, literary critic, and considered part of American Romantic movement. Poe is famous for his tales of mystery and the macabre. Poe and his works influenced literature in the United States and around the world, as well as in specialized fields. He is considered as one of the originators of both horror and detective fiction. As a critic, he was one of the first writers to put emphasis on the effect of styles and structure. Poe is particularly respected in France, in part due to earlier translations by Charles Baudelaire. His translations became definitive renditions of Poe's works throughout Europe. Poe and his works appear throughout popular culture in literature, music, films, and television. A number of his homes are dedicated museums today. In January 1845, Poe published his poem The Raven. For years, he had been planning to produce his own journal, The Pen, later renamed The Stylus, though he died before it could be produced. Poe's best-known works include the poems The Helen, The Raven, Annabel Lee, The Telltale Heart, The Cask of Amontillado, the supernatural horror story The Fall of the House of Usher, and The Black Cat, the short story we will analyze in this video. October the 7th, 1849, at the age of 40, Poe died in Baltimore. The cause of his death is unknown. The short horror story was written in 1843. The time and place are unknown, so is the narrator who tells the story from a first-person narrative. He opens the story by proclaiming that he's sane, despite the wild narrative he is about to convey. The narrative begins years before, when the narrator's honorable character is well known and celebrated. He confessed a great love for cats and dogs, both of which, he says, respect the fidelity of friendship and like fellow men. The narrator marries at a young age and introduces his wife to the domestic shop of owning pets. Among birds, goldfish, a dog, rabbits, and a monkey, the narrator singles out a large and beautiful black cat named Pluto as his favorite. Though he loves Pluto, he begins to suffer from violent mood swings, predominantly due to the influence of alcohol. He takes to mistreating not only the other animals, but also his wife. After returning home quite drunk one night, the narrator lashes out at Pluto. Believing that the cat was trying to avoid him, he vengefully grasped it, only to be bitten in the hand. The narrator pulls a knife from his pocket and cuts out one of the cat's eyes. Despite a partial feeling of remorse, one morning he hangs Pluto from a limb of a tree. The night of Pluto's hanging, the narrator's family house burns out. He dismisses the possibility of a connection between the two events.
The day after the fire, which destroys all the narrator's possessions, he witnesses a group of neighbors gathered around a wall that remains standing. Investigating the shouts of amazement, the narrator discovers the impression of a gigantic cat, with a rope around its neck, on the surface of the wall. The narrator attempts to explain rationally the existence of the impression, but he finds himself haunted by this ghost over the course of many months. One night, while out drunk, the narrator discovers a black animal poised upon a large barrel of alcohol. A new black cat has appeared, resembling Pluto but with a splash of white on its fur. As with Pluto, the narrator experiences a great fondness for the mysterious cat, which no one has seen before. The cat becomes a part of the household, much adored by his wife as well. The man cannot resist feelings of hatred for the cat. These murderous sentiments intensified when he discovers that the cat's splash of white fur has mysteriously taken the shape of the gallows, the structure on which hanging takes place. The white fur reveals the mode of execution that claimed Pluto, and the narrator pledges revenge. One day, descending into the cellar of the building with his wife, the narrator almost trips over the cat. Enraged, he grabs an axe to attack the cat, but his wife defends the animal. Further angered by the interference, he turns his rage at his wife and bursts the axe in her head. Faced with the evidence of his crime, the narrator considers many options for the body's disposal, including dismemberment and burial. The narrator eventually decides to take advantage of the damp walls in the basement and then dump the body behind the plaster. Without any difficulty, he creates a tomb in the plastic wall, hiding the body and any trace of the murder. When he finally turns to the cat, it is missing, and he concludes that it has been frightened away by his anger. On the fourth day after the murder, the police arrives unexpectedly at his home. He lets them through the premises even into the basement. Though facing the scene of the crime, the police did not demonstrate any curiosity and prepare to leave the residence. The narrator, however, keeps trying to allay their suspicion. Commenting upon the solid craftsmanship of the house, he taps on the wall, and a chilling shout can be heard. The police storm the wall and dismantle it, discovering the hidden corpse. Upon its head sits the missing cat. The man had accidentally buried the cat alive with his wife's corpse. The black cat follows the narrator's descent into madness, and he proclaims his sanity in the tale's opening paragraph. He even acknowledges the wild nature of the tale, attempting thereby to separate his mental condition from the events of the plot. He confesses an alcoholism that interferes with the grasp on reality and produces mood swings. Alcohol is, like the cat, an external agent that intrudes on the dynamics of the plot. The introduction of alcohol as a plot device is also significant because Edgar Allan Poe was reputedly uncontrollably drunk throughout his lifetime. Fantastic is a literary category that contains elements of both the rational and the irrational. One of the fantastic elements in the tale is the existence of a second cat, and the changing shape of its fur. The plot twist challenges reality, but they don't completely substitute a supernatural explanation for a logical one. It is possible that the plot twists drive only from the insanity of the narrator. The resolution of the story is both cautionary, possible, and tremendously unlikely. The cat could inhabit the basement walls, but it is difficult to believe what remains silently in the wall for a long time or goes unnoticed by the overly meticulous narrator.
The black cat refers to many obscure themes, like death, insanity, violence, and problems with alkalins. Death is mentioned many times in the text, like when he kills his cat by hanging it on a tree, when he tries to kill his other cat using an axe, or when he buries his cat alive in one of the walls of his house, along his wife's corpse. The insanity that the protagonist suffers is shown through the text. There is evidence in every page of the story, and we can witness some of his most depraved ideas come to life. Even when he feels bad about ripping one of his cat's eyes, this didn't stop him from killing it later by hanging it on a tree. His problems with alkalins are very evident. All of the violence caused in this story is the result of this and his uncontrollable anger whilst drunk. When he is under the influence, he behaves like a totally different person, to the point to hurt or never kill others. He knows he's undergoing a personality change, and looking back, he can see the clouded thinking and judgment that led him to make rash and terrible decisions against Pluto, his wife, and the black and white cat. He finds himself unable to control his emotions and unfit to climb out of his despair, falling back into a cycle that ultimately leads to his own death. As told before, the Black Cat story filled with violence, since at the first page we can see the atrocious acts that the protagonist commits to others, not only to animals, but to people, like his constant abuse toward his wife that concludes with her death. Unable to deal with his own feelings of unhappiness, the narrator takes his rage out of his wife and his pets. The predominant color is black, which represents evil, darkness, night, and despair. When used in opposition with white, it's a symbol of the eternal struggle between day and night, good and evil, and right and wrong. The objects that repeat are all objects of destruction: fire, blood, knives, an axe. Even the black cat is considered an omen of bad luck. The apparition of Pluto's image imprinted on the wall after the fire is also a symbol of the man's descent into madness and the guilt his action brought to him. He felt deserving of his misery. Another symbol of his guilt is when he starts seeing a glow in the white fur of the second cat. This can be interpreted as his guilt due to Pluto's death, or as a symbol of his future after the events that end up with his wife's death. The most important moral theme is justice and truth. The narrator tries to hide the truth by wailing up his wife's body, but the voice of the black cat helps bring him to justice. Another moral theme is superstition. The narrator's superstition makes him believe that Pluto's apparition after the fire is proof that his disgrace was brought to him by the violence he inflicted on that cat. The predominant moral theme is the effect of alcoholism, and how its violence affects a household. Death is the central focus of the entire story. To conclude, the message of the black cat is that guilt is inescapable and has far-reaching consequences.